Hi there. Welcome to Engage New York, Module 4, Lesson 14. This is Concept Development or the lecture. Let's begin. Jan had 3/5 pan of Rice Krispie treats. She sent 1/3 of the treats to school. What fraction of the whole pan did she send to school? So, question. How is this problem different than the problems we solved in the previous lesson? Can you tell? Can you name it? Can you say it out loud? Well, yesterday, Jan always had one fraction unit of treats. She had 1/2, 1/3, or 1/4. Today, she has 3/5. This one has a 3 in the ones section of our numerator. So we have 3 now in our numerator in one of our fractions here. So yesterday the previous lesson, we only multiplied unit fractions. So in this problem, what are we finding 1/3 of? We're finding 1/3 of 3/5, right? So before we find 1/3 of Jan's 3/5, think about this, visualize this. If there are 3 bananas, let's look right here. If you had 3 bananas, how many would 1/3 of the bananas be? 1/3 of 3 is always 1, right? So it doesn't matter what the unit is. What is 1/3 of 3 pens? 1 pen, right? 1 banana. What is 1/3 of 3 books? 1 book, right? Okay, so it doesn't matter what the unit is. Go back to what you know. So, what is 1/3 of 3/5? So think about that. What is 1/3? So if 1/3 of 3 pens is 1 pen, 1/3 of 3 books is 1 book, what is 1/3 of 3/5? What is it? 1/5, right? So let's just look at it this way too. So if we did the multiplication sentence, because we know that of equals multiplication, and we cross-canceled, our answer would end up being 1/5. But if you just think about it in simple units, 1/3 of 3 bananas is 1 banana. 1/3 of 3 pens is 1 pen. 1/3 of 3 books is 1 book. So 1/3 of 3/5, it'd be like 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5. It would be 1/5, right? So if we had 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5, and we wanted 1/3 of 1/5, it's 1/5, right? 1/5 of 3/5 would be 1/5. All right. So now, remember, the big idea of what we're doing in this lesson is not necessarily just multiplying a unit fraction by another fraction. It's actually being able to demonstrate what it looks like. So that's the big idea of what we're doing with this lesson. So 1/3 of 3/5 equals 1/5. Let's draw a rectangular fraction model here to prove what we just said. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's almost like this right here. Here's 1/5, 1/5, 1/5 right here, right? We just drew it in the other way. Before we're putting 1/3 here and 3/5 here. So let's play around with this a little. So 1/3, here is 1/3. Just keeping with what we've done before. Times 3/5, right? Now, we're only dealing with what the part of the fraction that's sectioned off. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're only dealing with this area right here, 3 of the 5th. So let's go ahead and shade that in. All right, so what we are doing here is the answer is in the double shaded area. Well, the double shaded area now is now in 15ths. 1, 2, 3 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we have 3 double shaded, 3 15ths, right? Well, 3 15ths, what is that going to reduce to? Well, 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 15 1/5. It takes us right back down to 1/5. All right. This starts to make people go sideways a little bit and not realize you're only dealing with what you're looking for is what is in the double shaded area is your answer. But remember, 3 15ths is really, you have to reduce that down to 1/5. Okay, moving on. Jan, again, had 3/4 pan of Rice Krispie treats. She sent 1/3 of the treats to school. What fraction of the whole pan did she send to school? So 1/3 of 3/4 really equals multiplication, right? Is and of. Okay, so how are we going to draw this out? What are we finding 1/3 of this time? So 1/3 of 3/4, right? So based on what we learned in the previous problem, what do you think the answer will be for 1/3 of 3/4? All right, so just like 1/3 of 3 apples is equal to 1 apple, 1/3 of 3/5 is 1/5. We know that 1/3 of 3/4 is equal to 1/4. So we are taking 1/3 of 3 units again. The units are fourths this time, so the answer is going to be 1/4. So what I want you to do is I want you to draw your area model or your rectangular fraction model, and I want you to try to create a model of 1/3 of 3/4 and see if you can come up with, see if your model matches your answer. That's what we're trying to, that's the big idea here. Can you make your rectangular fraction model or your area model, can you partition it and show the fraction? Come back in just a second and check to see if you're on the right track. All right, so here is the quick and dirty answer, but that's not what we're necessarily looking for, right? We're looking to see if we can show this in an area model. So in your area model, when you partition each of the fourths into 3 equal parts, what new unit, after you came down here, you drew your 3, then you came down here to your fourths, what new unit did you create? Well, you created twelfths. How many twelfths represent 1/3 of 3/4? 3/12. So what is 3/12 in its simplest form? 1/4. So we have just solved 1/3 of 3/5 is 1/5 and 1/3 of 3/4 is 1/4. What then is 1/3 of 3/8? Do you know? 1/3, let's come down here. 1/3 of 3/8. Okay, so what are the units that we're working with now? So we have, what is it going to be? So remember, 1/3 of 3/5 is 1/5, and 1/3 of 3/4 is 1/4. What then is 1/3 of 3/8? It's going to be 1/8. So 1/3 of 3/10 is 1/10. 1/3 of 3/100 is 1/100. Based on what you've just learned, what is 1/4 of 4/5? 1/5, right? Okay. So whenever you're doing the unit fraction, by wherever you can cross cancel across, it's always going to be that 1 with that same numerator. So what is 1/2 of 2/5? 1/5. Here, let me write this out so you can see it. I'm going to just write it off to the side here. I'm going to just write it along here. So we know 1/3 of 3/5 is 1/5. And we now know that 1/3 of 3/4 is 1/4. And 1/3 of 3/8 is going to be 1/8. 1/3 of 3/10 is going to be what? 1/10. Then 1/3 of 3/100 is going to be 1/100th. And 1/4 of 4/5 is going to be what? 1/5. Then we have, let's keep going, 1/2 of 2/5. It's going to be what? 1/5. And then let's end it right here. 1/4 of 4/7 is 1/7. All right, so keep that in mind. Look at the pattern. Just study the pattern. That'll be interesting to look through. The cross-canceling. And it's 1 of. Remember, if you had 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5, and you had 1/3 of 1/5, you would get 1/5, right? So think of it that way. All right, moving on. 1/2 times 4/5. So we need to find 1/2 of 4/5. If this was 1/2 of 4 bananas, how many bananas would we have? Write it down. 1/2 of 4 bananas is 2 bananas, right? So how can you use this thinking to help you find 1/2 of 4/5? 1/2 of 4/5. 2/5, right? Okay. It's half of 4, so it must be 2. It's time. This time it's 4/5. So half would be 2/5. Half of 4 is always 2. It doesn't matter that is fifths. The answer is 2/5. Okay. So let's draw a rectangular fraction model or area model to confirm our thinking. That's what we're doing. Okay, here we go. 1/2 of 4/5. 1/2 4/5. So here's half. And now we're going to break this up into fifths, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 lines will make 5 sections. All right, now let's shade in 4 of the fifths. Now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have tenths now, right? And how many of those tenths are double shaded? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So 4 tenths. But 4 tenths is going to break down to what? It's going to reduce to simplest form down to 2 fifths. And that's what we said, right? Okay. Coming along nicely. So our rectangular fraction model shows that the product of 4 tenths, but we said a moment ago that our product was 2 fifths. Did we make it a mistake? No, we did not. Because 4 tenths is just another name for 2 fifths because we needed to simplify, right? I can see 5 groups of 2 tenths, but only 2 of them are double shaded. So 2 out of 5 groups is another way to say 2 fifths. Okay, let's try it with 1/3 and 6/7. 1/3 and 6/7. Go ahead and try to draw out your rectangular fraction model. Put in your fractions, solve, and see if your fraction model represents your answer. Go ahead and come on back and check. How did you do? All right. So what patterns did you notice in our multiplication sentences? For me, I noticed that the denominator in the product is the product of the two denominators in the factor before we simplified. I noticed that you can just multiply the numerators and then multiply the denominators to get the numerator and denominator in the final answer. But if you were to split the amount in the second factor into thirds, it's like tripling the units. So it's like multiplying the first unit by 3. So with that, we could split this into sevens, right? Oh, it'd be 6/7, right? And then if you split that into thirds, you could do that, right? And there would be 2 sevens, 2 sevens, 2 sevens, right? And there you go, 2 sevens. All right, problem 4. What we're going to do on problem 4 and problem 5 and problem 6, 4, 5, and 6, we're going to talk about it, you're going to try to solve it, and you're going to come back and check your work to see if yours matches mine or is some sort of combination of the two. So let's read the problem. 3/4 of Benjamin's garden is planted with vegetables. Carrots are planted in half of his vegetable section of the garden. How much of Benjamin's garden is planted in carrots? This is such a typical problem that you would see on standardized testing. So this is definitely something that you want to get good at. So go ahead and try it out. Come back and check your work. First of all, go back to what you know. You're multiplying two fractions together, right? Then you're modeling it in a rectangular fraction model. Big idea. Just go back to what you know. Don't get wrapped around the words. All right. So 1/2 of 3/4 is 3/8. We drew it out. Here's half, and then here's 3/4. We cut it up. We double shaded the area 3 now of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 3/8. Now, I know this problem was, if you start thinking about it, it's a little bit trickier than what we did previously, because remember when we said the others were, I don't know, this one seems a little trickier because all the others were easy to have. They were all even numbers of units. So this is half of 3. So do you see how this is half of 3? So if you didn't like working with that and you wanted to make this 6/8, you could also do that, because 6/8 is actually equivalent to 3/4. If you were thinking about that halving, 1/2. So you could also think of it that way if you wanted to, or simply solve like this. All right, next problem. Solve this by drawing a rectangular fraction model and write a multiplication sentence. Then compare this model to the one we drew for Benjamin's garden. What do you think? Is it similar? Is it not similar? So what is it? 1/2. We did 1/2 of 3/4, and we're doing 3/4 of 1/2. So draw it out. Draw it a rectangular fraction model and write your numerical sentence, and then kind of compare the two models that you did before. All right, so 3/4 of 1/2 is still 3/8. So this time I started with 3/4, and then took half, right? And it's still 1, 2, 3 of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 3/8. 3/8 is double shaded. All right. This is a great problem. I'll just tell you, this is a great problem. You might see this problem again on maybe a quiz or a test. Excellent problem here. Okay, Mr. Becker, the gym teacher, uses 3/5 of his kickballs in class. Half of the remaining balls are given to students for recess. What fraction of the kickballs is given to students for recess? Okay, now let's try using a tape diagram this time. So, what fraction of the balls does Mr. Becker use in class? Well, he uses what? 3/5. So let's break this up into fifths. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 3/5 used in class. But we don't know how many total balls there are. So we don't know how many are used at recess. Okay, so we know that he uses 3/5 in class. What fraction of the balls is remaining? 2/5. How many of those balls are given to students for recess? How many of these, of the remaining, are given to students for recess? So half of the remaining. Half. Right? So what is 1/2 of 2? 1. What's 1/2 of 2/5? Okay. Do you see what's happening here? So what is 1/2 of 2/5? We just did that. We've been talking about it, right? So 1/2 of 2/5 is what? 1/2 of 2/5 equals what? 1/5, right? So could you do it with 1/3 of 3/5? 1/3 of 3/5? 1/3 of 3/5 would be what? 1/5, right? Okay. This was simply using our tape diagram and looking at this. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3/5 are being used. 2/5 are going to be half of what's left here is going to be used for recess. So 1/2 of the 2/5 that are left over. 1/2 of 2/5, 1/5. All right, you guys, let's take a look at the problem set. I'm pretty sure you're ready. Okay, so solve and draw a rectangular fraction model to explain your thinking, then write a number sentence. So you're drawing out your rectangular fraction model and writing a number sentence. Not that hard. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those. Now we have a couple of word problems. And you want to get real comfortable with word problems because that's what fifth grade's all about and above. So 5/8 of the songs on Harrison's music player are hip hop. 1/3 of the remaining songs, so 1/3 of 5/8. Remember, if it's hard to break up, you can always make an equivalent fraction here too. 1/3 of the remaining songs are rhythm and blues. What fraction of all the songs are rhythm and blues? Use a tape diagram. So this one, using that tape diagram, is probably going to be the most helpful. 3/5 of the students in a room are girls. 1/3 of the girls have blonde hair. 1/2 of the boys have brown hair. So both of these problems depend on one question here. What fraction of all the students are girls with blonde hair? So 3/5 of 1/3, right? And then what fraction of all the students are boys without brown hair? I would draw out your rectangular fraction model to help me with that. I think that, you know what? Even just using a tape diagram here would be helpful. I would use a tape diagram here and a tape diagram here. I don't think you're going to need a model here. You're just going to write what fraction of all the students are boys without brown hair. So you should be able to just solve this. Now, problem 4, we're going to go back to the tape diagram. Cody and Sam mowed the yard on Saturday. Dad told Cody to mow 1/4 of the yard. He told Sam to mow 1/3 of the remainder of the yard. So 1/3 of what's left. So 1/3 of what? 3/4, right? Dad paid each of the boys an equal amount. Sam said, Dad, that's not fair. I had to mow 1/3 and Cody only mowed 1/4. Explain to Sam the error in his thinking. Draw a picture. So, after Cody mowed 1/4 of the yard, what part of the yard is left? 3/4 is left, right? So, Sam mowed 1/3 of 3/4, right? So go with that as you solve here because you're going to keep going with that idea. All right, good luck. You should do real well. Come back for the problem set debrief to check your work.